Hello chess fans, I am absolutely thrilled to present a game which features such a amazing, brilliant attacking concept. It's rarely seen at the very top, but when it happens, it gives you a feeling like, wow, this is how I want to play chess myself. This is why I love the game so much. Well, it at least happened to me when I saw it being played at the World Chess Olympiad in Budapest. It's from round 4. It's from the match Spain against Mongolia at the women's section. And well, it's a game between two very strong players, Vega Gutierrez and Nomine Erdene. Both are rated over 2300. They are both international master, and it's such a cool game. I would like to explore the ins and outs of it together with you. Just one little favor, and that's to subscribe to the channel. Give this video a like if you do like this content, not only about this game, but also about the entire Olympiad. There are so many spectacular games being played. I try to cover as much as I can. But this game is certainly one of those you don't want to miss. So let's go together and see what happens. Vega Gutierrez is playing with the white pieces. She goes for 1 e4. It's not about the opening. It's a very sharp, modern, trendy line in the Sicilian defense. It's the so-called 4 knights opening. Black goes for the move e6, and there are different ways of playing here. Let's go through the start as the first, let's say, 15 moves of theory. They're all pretty standard, well known. And at the Olympiad, these teams, they come so well prepared with strong coaches, with very nice opening ideas. They're preparing very seriously for each other. So this is one of the critical lines where Black has chosen for this structure with pawns on the light square. So at this point, especially this light square bishop on c8 is going to suffer a bit. But Black is going to try to find a way to activate it with bishop b7, bringing it to the long diagonal. White goes for bishop e2, c5. So here you see that the diagonal is opened for the bishop. The pawn is no longer standing in the way. Castling kingside, queen c7. Now things are getting quite interesting. As knight d6 check is played. Black, of course, takes it with the bishop. Pawn takes back, attacking the queen. But here Black cannot take that pawn. If you do so, there's the move c4, and you do lose the knight on d5. Because if the knight moves away, then the queen on d6 will be hanging. So instead, Black plays the move queen c6. So here you see the queen and bishop are setting up a huge threat on this diagonal. You can move the knight away, and then there will be a mating threat on g2. So White plays the move f3, and Black goes for the move e5. White played the move c4, attacking the knight, trying to save the pawn on d6. And the idea of Black's last move is knight f4. So the knight is being protected by the pawn. Bishop takes, pawn takes. And well, this pawn on f4 is looking quite vulnerable. Can be won probably at some point. But first White activates her bishop to d3. Black is anticipating sort of problems in the center with the rook coming to the e-file. So now Black is in time to bring the king into safety. And the bishop goes to c2. So here the pawn on d6 is defended. Once again, rook e8 played, and now queen d3. This is also a battery by White's queen and bishop, attacking the pawn on h7, threatening checkmate in 1. Of course, Black is not going to fall for that cheapo. So g6 is played. And here, rook fe1. So it looks like White is in good shape. The pawn on d6 is quite a nuisance. I think the pawn is much more annoying than the pawn on f4. But still, Black is trying to hang in there. And things are not that simple. If you move the queen away, maybe you put a bishop on c6 so that you defend your pawn on d7. But the next move by Black is a serious error. I really dislike it. Rook takes rook, as I'm struggling to understand why Black does give up that open file that easily. Like here, the rook is ready to come in to e7. Queen b6 was played. So here, Black is setting up a counterattack against the pawn on b2. And that's why the rook doesn't really want to go to e7. Maybe Black can take on b2, and there's all lots of counterplay there. So the move played by Vega Gutierrez is very instructive. It's queen d2. And it's not that you're attacking the pawn on f4, that's one of the ideas. But the main point is that the pawn on b2 is indirectly defended here with rook b1. Once the queen is moving, the bishop on b7 is hanging. So the pawn is poisoned, cannot be taken. The bishop goes to c6. And now the bishop is protected, of course. Queen takes b2 is a threat, and therefore white moves her bishop to e4. White wants to trade off this bishop. Black played rook c8, maybe also not the most logical move, because after bishop takes c6, black takes back with the queen, and here the rook comes into e7. And you see that if white were allowed to play 2 more moves, there is queen takes f4, that would be pawn number 1, but after that also the pawn on f7 is threatened to be taken. So here, black goes back with her rook to f8, tries to keep everything defended, and white, if white wants, can take the pawn on f4, but the pawn is weak. It's not running away. And the big question is, in general, how is white going to break through? It's obvious that white is better. Both major pieces are superior to black's, but it's not game over yet. But now Vega Gutierrez comes up with a brilliant plan. It starts with this move h4. So we see this very often in modern chess, bringing up the flank pawn with the idea to open up the king side. Black usually doesn't want to take, as it weakens the g file. You can always get your queen in with checks. Otherwise the pawn comes to h6, and there are probably mating ideas on the g7 square. So black wants to stop the march of the h pawn. White plays the move b3. So now the queen side is very nicely controlled. There's no chance for black here at all to generate counterplay. Well, black is trying to do that, in fact, with the move a5. And now you may consider taking that pawn, but there's probably something like rook a8. There's no need to allow counterplay. By the way, you don't want to take on a5, not for rook a8, but pawn on d6 is hanging. So that's why you keep the queen on d2. So you keep the pawn defended. You're also threatening the pawn on f4. So the pawn on f4 was taken now. That is a very good technical move. Pawn is defended. And, well, black is a pawn down, but is searching for counterplay. With the move a4, and what is black going to do? Well, that's not so clear. White feels like, okay, let's put the king on a somewhat safer square, getting out of any sort of potential checks. I like always the cooperation between the young queen and the king. So the queen is a great attacker, but it's also guarding the king on standing on the same diagonal. So everything is perfectly under control. Pawn takes b3, white recaptures. Queen b7 played, attacking the pawn on b3. Now you don't want to give up that pawn on b3 too easily. Queen e3 played. Black can barely move. You cannot really move the rook away. There will always be a problem regarding your pawn on f7. Also the pawn on c5 is under threat. So queen c6 played, attacking the pawn on d6. Queen comes to e5. And here it is, rook to b8. And now you think, okay, the pawn on b3 is threatened to be taken. Not at all. White further strengthens the position here. Queen and rook are fantastically placed. You can almost not improve them any further. But look at this. King to g3. What is this king going to do? Is it more safe on g3 instead of h2? Well, it's clear. The pawn on b3 cannot be taken. There's rook e8 check, king h7, and it is checkmate in the corner. So the rook cannot leave the back rank. Therefore, rook a8 was played. But now there is queen f6 attacking the pawn on f7 with mate to come. So the rook gotta go back to f8. And you can see in the last few moves, nothing has happened at all. But this is the moment. Probably this game will be the immortal game for Vega Gutierrez. Now, she comes up with such a beautiful attacking idea. As here the king comes in to f4. Fantastic idea. And here, probably it starts ringing a bell. White is looking for a king walk to h6. In the spirit of this famous game of Nigel Short against Jan Timman, was a very similar idea with even more pieces on the board. But the concept is very, very similar. Like White's major pieces are dominating the center. There's no way for black to exploit that, let's say, misplacement of the king on f4. It's quite open, but black doesn't have any good check. The rook from f8 cannot move. The queen cannot get closer to the center. King h7 was played. You cannot allow that king to coming to h6 because it will be mate. Like the king and pawn, they can have a similar role on that h6 square. So king h7, but anyway, the king comes to g5. That is much stronger than capturing the pawn on f7. That's, of course, also a possibility. But here, white even has another threat of probably even take the pawn on g6 with check, as the pawn on f7 is pinned. It's a bad defender. Black played queen a8, and now, well, various good moves. You can play this move, queen takes g6, as I mentioned, but rook takes f7 is also very, very nice move. So black is forced to swap the rooks. King goes back to h8, and now there are various nice ideas, but in particular, I do like the move king to h6. You're completing your king walk to h6, threatening mate on either g7 or h7, and there's nothing black can do against it. I mean, black resigned here because, for instance, if you do play the move queen g8, then it is queen f6 with checkmate to come. The only move to stop mate is queen g7, but then you simply take the queen. So that is just a beautiful idea. This is such a beautiful idea. It rarely happens in top level chess, as I said. In general, the reason you should not try this yourself in one of your next games is that you can only do this idea when you really control the center and you're dominating the strongest pieces of your opponent. So that's a very important lesson, keeping in mind when trying to execute such an idea. It's a remarkable idea. It always comes with a bit of risks, but when carrying it out in the right way, then you have a really nice extra addition to your attack, because the king is also just a nice attacking weapon in such positions. Well, let me know in the comments what you think of this game. Hopefully you are able to play such a king walk in one of your next games, but you're warned, do it only when you're 100% sure, and otherwise, well, you better keep your king in a safer place. Thanks for watching this video, and many more exciting games to come on this channel. So give this video a like, hit the subscribe button, and then I'll see you soon again.